to the show, CJ. Are you ready to shine?
I am ready to shine.
Woohoo! So
Woohoo!
I hear you just got a little run in.
I did. You know what I just realized is I realized that you know how they always say if you want something done, give it to a busy person.
Absolutely.
And so the starting in Thanksgiving and until now, I've just been not adding any like work. I've just been, aside from the radio shows and some coaching clients, of which I have like maybe three. There's not a ton right now. Um, and then people who are calling. I told you last week that all my clients are crashing. so, anyways, I've been working with those more frequently this week. But it feels like I'm far more disorganized because I have this free time than when I actually have work to do. I'm like, at that time, I'm on cue, everything's happening. And so I was just in the gym 15 minutes ago. Michael called and I was like, I got to run home.
It's
I'm,
something I don't know if I talked about it with a coaching. I think I was with a coaching client recently rather than on the show. I was talking about the need for an anchor.
yeah.
And so when you don't have that much going on that you need to be at, you're untethered, you're
I
unplugged and
am
unanchored.
completely untethered. I am completely untethered, sadly. But I
Well,
guess that's
it's
part of it, right? I mean, and sometimes in life you have to flow. So this is a time in my life where I'm flowing, and
it's
I
a
am
time.
flowing.
Yeah, it's a time of great growth. It's also a time of it's like I have a lot of challenges with clients on the weekends. It's interesting. The weekdays go great. They often crash, or historically, if they were to crash, it would be on the weekend if we hadn't come up with a system to get them through the weekends. What I mean by that is we're always to doing on the weekdays and we know what's going on then. The
Hmm.
weekends, we cast the anchor aside, not a problem, good to go with the flow. But then comes Sunday night, and if there wasn't some sort of a system in place, there comes a little bit of a holy crap, I haven't done anything all weekend. The
Hmm.
Monday morning is starting, I'm now behind, blah, blah, blah. And the ego goes, all right, my turn. And starts to dance the Magarena on your heart for you actually enjoying your day.
Yes.
And and so it actually, you're going through that on more of a weekday thing here, but it actually promotes a lot of growth because it starts to pull at, with that free time, it starts to pull at the threads of fears and insecurities. And I think all
You mean
sorts of
that Monday when you go back to work? Is that when you kind of start seeing it more obviously? Is that what you're? I
absolutely.
see. Okay, so you're saying during the weekend, you're flowing, you're kind of flowing with life, and if you go through all the spiritual texts, they would say that's ideally what you should be doing. And then the weekday comes, and you're like, okay, now I need to be on task and get things done. So,
So before the weekend, the weekday starts, when you have realization, if you've been in the present moment, when suddenly you realize, oh, wait, there was one, two, or three things that I wanted to get done this weekend,
hmm.
and I didn't get any of them done. And all of a sudden, the ego, which has taken the nice passenger seat, comes back and said, see, I couldn't give you that free time. I gave you all that free time, and look what you did with it. You didn't get any of the things done that you needed to get done.
Man, your ego is rough on you. I guess all of our egos are rough on each other.
I think all of our egos are. Now certainly mine's going to Jessica's like, good ego, Michael. It's okay. You're gonna be all right. But right now, Michael's higher self is
Yes.
gonna take the driver's seat.
You know what I realized yesterday? I was just doing I did this. I just started signing up for Insight Meditation. It's this online service that my husband uses just to keep him. He uses it as a game, so he gets used to doing meditation. And if he doesn't do meditation, it shows how many consecutive days that you've done meditation, and you can figure out how many minutes you've done meditation. So just like with your runs, you're kind of recording
Game your
everything.
meditation. I like it.
He's doing that for his meditation, which would not motivate me at all, but for him, it completely gets him going. So I signed up for it a while ago and I got this meditation, and it was stepping you through your whole, stepping you through moments of your life, all the way from like when you're in grade school to high school to college, and then beyond. And you're kind of like tuning into your essence at that moment, and whatever pops into your unconscious pops into your unconscious. So I had one when I was a little kid, I was dancing, and then and I was like dancing, literally dancing with the universe. And I wouldn't even have known about it except I saw a video of it. I'm like, who is that child when you're talking about innocent eyes? I don't know what you were like as a child because this is what your innocent eyes look like. But for me, I was dancing around. And then when I was in high school, I would be like, there was a scene of me and my friends were laughing. There was a fancy restaurant and we used to smash our faces against the window.
Is this in your head, or are there videos that are pulling up from your computer? What's going on
No,
here?
these are like the meditation is like step through and just pull up a memory and like the
Okay,
memories
so
pop up. And then all of a sudden I got to my college, like first year, and then it was like, that's when I started. I was at General Electric and I was in the financial management training program where you actually had to work during the day and during the weekends you had to study the whole weekend in order,
yeah.
because half of your salary, half of your bonus was based on how well you did on these exams and tests, and the other half was your performance at work. And then after that, I went to Berkeley at school at night, to get my MBA. And so I was doing that. So I was always studying during the weekends. And I realized from the moment of my adulthood, my weekends were always filled with work. Like I never had the notion of free time, which is so why free time is so hard for me, because since I was 21 till this point, like didn't really have free time. I didn't even know what to do with it. Is that weird? Like it was literally that meditation that I was like, no wonder it's so hard for me to have free time and flow around.
It's both hard, and I think it particularly in this culture, it's the norm. It's hard to have free time, and then so you fill it every chance you get. But then if you do have it, there can be even a freak out associated with it of a I'm supposed to be doing something right now, and you get nervous going, I need to be doing something. I don't know what it is, but there's something that's not getting done that I need to get done, and so you're not even present with your free time.
Yep. Yep. That's exactly what's happening for me. So tell me about what's happening for you. So you're, you're smudging with sage. What's that all about? That's usually not a good thing.
Well, I was smudging with sage. We've got what, 3 days now till our audit.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to get things done. It's been a phenomenal week for the show. It's been a phenomenal week with coaching. But when I try to step back and go into that quiet place, my ego right now is like, look, dude, here's what's coming. Do you know what's coming? Let me tell you what's coming. And I'm like, no, it's all okay. And so before the interview here, I was prepping him for another interview that I have a little bit later today, another beautiful interview. But it turns out the book that I was reading is not the book that I'm going to be able to
Oh
discuss.
no. Well, can she talk about the other book?
It's all going to be fine. It's all going to be
Yeah.
perfect. But it's just all of these little triggers coming up. I went to the gym and like I'm off by myself in the corner trying to get a quick little workout in, and somebody comes in who's singing, but he's standing right next to me singing.
No. I'm really happy that you're happy, dude, but maybe a little bit.
A little bit of personal space here.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so I got back here and I really couldn't get that chatter to get under control. That's
Mm.
telling me you need to get things under control. And so I'm like, all right, let's put on some Bobby McFerrin music. And there's a Bobby McFerrin song, Mr. Don't Worry, Be Happy, of him in a stadium in Europe with 50, 60, maybe 80,000
Mm.
people singing in unison with him. If you haven't heard it, Google Bobby McFerrin sing. It is a spiritual, mind-blowing experience. So I'm listening to
Mm.
that to help get me in the right space. I jump into my automatic writing. I'm setting some intentions. I
Nice.
grow and grab some sage and I'm smudging. I'm like, let's throw the kitchen sink at it. That's when Jessica came in, started patting me on the head, going, good ego, Michael. It's okay. You can take a back seat. Sounding a little bit like Adam Sandler.
Wow. So really, so you pulled out all the stops and and
Pulled out all this.
what did you come up with after, like after your automatic writing, setting up your intentions, smudging with sage? I love usually smudging with sage is usually what you do when you have dark, I guess dark stuck energy. So is that what you feel like your ego is dark stuck energy?
I just feel like ego be gone. If I had chicken, I'm a vegan. I'm not sure if I really want to wave chicken bone sticks, but
Yeah.
I'll do whatever. Throw the kitchen sink at it. And that really is a theme that I think you would agree with, and we certainly do here is, throw out all the stops. Who knows exactly what's working? So hit it from every direction possible.
Mm-hmm.
If your ego is trying to get in the driver's seat, and I find the more you do the work, the what would you say? The higher you are, the farther you fall. When you
Mm-hmm.
do the work and your ego tries to get into the driver's seat, it's wanting to go full throttle down.
Yeah.
Do whatever you can.
Yeah,
Do
no, I know. I've
whatever you
I've tried. Like I usually what when mine goes berserk is and what's happened to me lately, because I feel like my we had talked about it's like a catharsis right now. I'm going through a lot of cleansing internally, and it was self-invoked. Like my intention was to wake my heart, and part of that process has been just like stuff that's been coming up that was in the heart that I didn't know, and so I've been waking up like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, which I haven't done in a while. Like I'm waking up at 3 and 4, and I'm just like I don't even know what I've been dreaming, but it's or sometimes I do know what I've been dreaming, but it's this kind of like a fear and kind of panic coming up, and it's your ego, right? It's your mind and your ego running amok, and sometimes I shine white light on it, and that generally has been doing the trick. Like if I start trying to shine the white light of truth, it usually puts me back to sleep because it's like, oh no, I don't want to find you. Good night. Then I just go to sleep. But then I wake up in the morning and start digging in. I'm like, wow, something was going on last night. But what happens is I'll wake up again at 6 in the morning and my head is just running amok. And sometimes I'm able to just breathe my way out. But then there are other times where like you try to pull out all the stops, and then sometimes I'm like, okay, this is just ridiculous. I'm just gonna get up and write the whatever, or read the whatever, or start preparing for the interview, or whatever it is that I'm stressed out. I'm like, this is just there's. Sometimes I look at it as there's energy. Energy is coming up to do these things, so just go do those things, and then the energy will subside, and maybe sometimes I convince myself, and I actually do think that this is true. Sometimes the energy is there for you to do those things, and so it's like surfing a wave, and you just want to catch it and just go for it, and you know that the wave will subside, and then you can kind of get back to a peaceful place. But if you don't ride the wave and use the energy in the way that it's coming up for you, I don't know. I had this person who was we were talking about DMT, and he was saying that when you do DMT, which is an artificial, it's in your body, but then this guy was injecting DMT into his patients. But the whole idea is like if you're doing things to cultivate your mind, then you kind of open the meditation, DMT, whatever it is, the thing that's moving you forward actually opens your mind, and then you connect to spirit. And then sometimes, so like we think about it as a bottoms up approach like this. So we're like thinking about connecting to spirit and it comes like this. But he's like,
Almost
well,
like a tree at the
yeah,
top, going
yeah,
outward, expanding up
yeah,
and
but it
out.
comes down. It comes from down from the roots and then up and out. But he said, but it also could be instead of a bottoms up, could be a tops down. So it could be that the spiritual information, like my desire to wake up in the morning and do whatever, was a spiritual voice in my head. Like I don't know where it comes from, right? Is it ego or is it spirit? Sometimes I think it's unclear, right? Like if something is so strong and it's moving through you, sometimes I think, well, maybe that is spirit. We think it's ego, but it could be spirit because it sounds everything like ego. I don't know. That's all
I
I.
think my determination, and there are times where I'm sure I'm not clear as well, is what would love do? Is this a love thing? Is this a fear thing? Um, if it's a fear thing, that it's interesting. Fear is such a wiggly worm because you're right about this in that spirit can be moving you to take action, um, which is a great thing, or it could be the ego
Mm-hmm.
going into a place of fear. Creative angst is actually, I think, being in spirit, in inspiration, but just maybe getting a little tap or knock on the shoulder or hit from behind saying, catch up with the wave before it goes without you.
Mm.
This is for you to take the ride.
Mm.
Uh, I know that happens before a lot of shows, and I realize that's not so much, it feels like fear, but somehow it's different. I know I'm being completely ambiguous and vague here,
Right.
but before shows, I get a nervous energy, which is actually a good thing. Those shows where I tend to be nervous tend to go extremely well. I just have to do, like you're saying, surf the wave, and be okay with it. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if there's a maliciousness to it of a you've got to do this, you've got to do that, that I know is my ego trying to get in the game.
Right. So then it's really tuning in and saying, is it fear or love? So when you tuned into your IRS rant, was it fear or love?
Fear,
Fear. Okay, got it.
fear, and not it's not even what it is a feeling of a non-real feeling of lack of a how do you fit all these pieces together, and if you don't do this then that won't happen, and something and so forth. I'm able to catch it really early now. That doesn't mean I don't have the emotions that we all have, so I can watch it, but you still get the human experience.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's no way of escaping it. It's funny because sometimes like it's about catching it before it gets too great, right? Have you ever interviewed Joseph Goldstein? He has this book called Mindfulness. Oh, I would highly recommend it. It's funny because you know how when you look back at your interviews, you don't really know which ones you're always going to really, really remember. But I really, really remember that interview, and it was I was saying, when you were writing a book, doesn't your ego get involved, and don't you get worried about, is a book going to do well? Is it going to be people going to like the book, or because he's written lots and lots of books. And he said, I don't know if I'm going to do this exactly right, but he said, I do. I still actually worry. I want people to like the books. I enjoy the books. And I said, so, and I was explaining, like, I had one of these experiences where something came up, and I wanted to understand, like, why is this idea coming up? And where can I trace the roots of what the feeling of fear is that's coming up? And how can I shine white light to it and like bring it up and bring it in light of day and love it and all of that. And he's like, and he's like, well, I'm like, what do you do? And he's like, oh, I just think fear, and then I move on. Like,
I like it.
yeah, because he's like, you don't have to like put all this like he's like, you don't have to put all this energy. It's being mindful that the fear is coming up, labeling it fear. So you're like recognizing. You're not like going like, I would describe the differences like he's like, oh, fear, like a little, you know, red light is showing up on his shoulder and he's going, oh, fear. And then he's meditating and kind of being present, even though he's allowing the fear to be there. He's not trying to make the fear go away. He's recognizing the fear, but he's not feeding or giving it any energy. And I view that my approach has been more like, oh, fear. Oh, let me open you up and look and see what else is inside. So it was interesting to see the contrast of the two. And, even though I've been meditating for a while, I think if you go through the process enough, you're like, oh, there's fear. You can kind of ignore it. But I don't know if I'm definitely not there yet, but there have been times I'm able to catch it before it gets into the fear, which is like a small little circle, ends up being just like the size of the sun. Yes, I think it's just about catching it, but then I think it's about practicing, noticing, and after a while, I think you get better and better at it.
Where I'm going with it right now is I'm noticing that one of my very successful strategies is going to movement, going out for walks, going for
Mm,
runs, going to the gym, going to nature. And though in automatic writing I get to nature more, that will help you.
mm-hmm.
And this has been a week where nature has taken kind of a back seat. And in automatic writing today, I'm going, the ego is trying to go amok and it's going, well, have you been to nature? You must get
Mm,
yourself to nature, 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 nature. So that's going to be even more important. But what I'm also trying to do is catch these things when I want to make a run for it, fight or flight. I'm saying I
mm.
need to get outside right now. I'm trying, and I can't say I'm successful yet, but I think it's an important part of my development to actually see if I can stay seated and either meditate into the experience or journal into the experience and stay with it rather than go away.
Yeah, I think that that's a hard thing. Is that I think that if you're as empty as Joseph Goldstein, who's been like a practicing mindfulness for probably like 40 years, I think that maybe you can do this. Oh, fear. But until you reach that point where it's almost like you have to be so empty, that for a lot of the for one, a lot of Buddhists, they talk about just completely emptiness. If you're so empty, then it's this little fear can stand in the room and you're okay with it. But I think for me, at least, I have like, it's not just this one little fear. There's like 15 little fears.
And they got daggers.
Right. And they're all like singing a chorus of different things. But I think that that's where, when you do look into it, it shrinks it shrinks. Did I tell you this? I don't know if I told you this last week. I almost said, like, when I started working, before doing all the work that I've done, like you were talking about the emotional code. Is that what it was called?
Yeah, Dr. Bradley Nelson.
Yeah, emotional code. I've done work like that for probably the last 15 years. And I said that at the very beginning of that work, my fears were like gigantic. It was like, I don't know, like a gigantic brown, like polar bear, like gigantic bear. Just like, rah, rah, like, it's like, ah.
You did that well.
Let's hear your imitation of a turkey again. That's my bear imitation.
Not quite as scary. Though if you opened up your closet and you heard that at 2 a.m.
Yeah, that would be terrifying. So I had this big bear next to me, which was my ego, and it's just sitting around, and I'm like running around, being chased by this bear. And then over time, when you do the things that you and I have been doing, right, where you wake up in the morning.
The image of the turkey chasing you out of my head now.
Sometimes it is a turkey and it feels like a bear, right? But it's like you're setting, what you did this morning, right? Like you're getting chased by the gigantic bear, that you're setting intentions, you're smudging with sage, you're like resetting the day with the Bobby McFerrin music. Like all those things help the bear to, like, at least the bear is sitting now. The bear's not chasing you around. And then over time, the bear can shrink down to like maybe like a dog. And then the dog can shrink down to like a Chihuahua. Like it's, it moves from a Saint Bernard to like a Chihuahua. And then I'm hoping that it can get smaller and smaller and smaller to the point that it occupies less space, so that there's more emptiness. And you can be like Joseph Goldstein, where you have like a little, ceramic figure now of a Chihuahua. Like it's much smaller. The bear has moved to the ceramic figurine of a Chihuahua. But until then, no, but I think until then you have to do the kind of stuff that you're talking about. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you don't, because I haven't done enough mindfulness stuff to get there, but I'm not sure.
And I've done quite a bit of mindfulness, not 40 years, more 10 years or maybe a little bit less, somewhere in there, maybe actually a little bit more. I can, and so I'm getting better. I'm still, and maybe it's on a curve too, compared to 40 years. I've got a fractional amount, but I can at least observe it.
Yeah.
And I can label it. And that's actually for me, when I'm in the thick of things, to go, wait, whoa, this isn't me. I want you to realize the emotions going on here. They're the little kid. They're the emotional wiring. That doesn't mean we're shaking any less. But I think that gives a lot of freedom. So Jessica, she was working in the room too, because the studio has become, what do you want to call it? Accounting central. Yeah. And so you've got documents every which way. And so she was working right next to me when I said, my ego is in a very scared place right now. I think I need some private time. And she said, I handled that very well, because she goes, usually when you chase me out of the room, it's not so kind.
Well, yeah. So I think it's about being, I think that there's a different level of mindfulness, because I feel like I'm becoming more mindful for sure too. This guy is like, he's like meditating a good portion of the day. Do you know what I mean? And he's been reading these ancient texts, these Buddhist texts, and doing translations of these Buddhist texts. Like he's like 24/7 in this kind of mindfulness. So he's at this level that, frankly, I've never even seen someone at that level.
So if we took a car,
like Lama Surya Das is at that level, and this guy is also at that level, where he's just. It's fascinating to see, actually, when you talk to people like that, and they. Yeah, like Lama Surya Das. I'll say, so what do you do? Like, you're mad about politics and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, he's right there with me. And then he goes like this, like he goes up the spiritual chain. Like in this moment of like, he's in the story. He says, yes, I'm in the story. I get the story. And then he goes like up hit the amount of
It's the
time from,
elevator.
yeah, the story all the way to the elevator, all the way to the top to get the highest perspective and to
Hmm.
accept what is. It's literally, if you see him, it's fascinating. It probably happens in 10 seconds. So he can be there with you, but then he's practiced so much not going into the story that he jumps up like in 10 seconds. Whereas most of us would be still circling around in the stories, like, maybe like 20, 30 minutes more. He's just, whoop, it's fascinating to watch.
That reminds me when you said that about the love of Matt Kahn,
Mm-hmm.
who has a book, Whatever Rises, Love That,
Mm.
and going right to that place of, wow, that's horrible, and I love that just as it is.
Mm-hmm. I
So
love
not
that
even sure
idea.
he would use the word horrible, but to recognize whatever experience it is and just love it as it is.
So hard to do, but I think it's nice. Yeah, I think it's more. I love that idea, and I love that's just about acceptance and allowing. Um, and I think
But
that
also
that's really
taking it to
important.
that highest point.
Yeah, of love.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Have you tried it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It works a lot. It doesn't work well. I'm very good at not judging external experiences and external people. External people, I guess everybody is. We're all anyway.
Versus
That's
internal
that's just a
people.
whole nother
Versus your
story.
internal people who are your guides. Is that what you meant?
We're not even going to try to figure that one out. But the external experience. So a good example, and I used this on a show with Jessica a couple of days ago, is one of my goals, if you want to call it that. I'll put that in quotes. For Friday is to make a new friend with the auditor.
Yeah, that's a
That
great idea.
she's just another reflection of me, of the God that we all are. Um, she is me.
Mm-hmm.
And so if one of my goals for Friday is how can I brighten her day, no matter
Mm.
what, then I think that radically shifts the experience.
Yeah, I think it
And
does.
and I'm really looking forward to that. I was like, after I spoke with you before, I'm like, do I even call her? Do I start to build a relationship? What can I do to make a new friend?
Mm-hmm.
I'm really good about the external stuff. The internal stuff is where I get a lot more work to do.
Right.
Who knows? Lifetimes more work to do of how do I love whatever arises inside of me when what is arising, well, when I say it, it intellectually makes sense. It's my ego trying to protect me and trying to keep me safe. That
Mm-hmm.
makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But then the ego goes, and instead of releasing some fun DMT, maybe, it goes and releases some cortisol, some adrenaline, and whatever gunk it can put in the soup
Right.
to get me under its control.
Yeah. I, I wonder whether that if again like the if that is probably all true for me and for you and for a good many of us, but don't you feel like the maybe the amount of cortisol is less over time? Like all this stuff, it feels like I'm the only way that I know that I'm lightening up or I'm getting to some different kind of state is that I just know that if like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I would have acted completely differently when that same situation happened. So I feel like my response, I still maybe go into it, but I go into it for less amount of time. And so the goal is to be like, Lama Surya Das or Joseph Goldstein, where the fears are like, oh, fear. Oh, okay, interesting. Or I'm going to go into the story and like, whoop, all of a sudden see a higher perspective in like 10 seconds or less and not go into this. Really, that's not even going into the story, right? Like you hear the story, you acknowledge it, but then you're whoop, go up into higher perspective. I think that that's where if you, over time, and if you spend a lot of time and energy focusing on it, that's where I think you get to. I guess. I don't know.
A couple of things come from that. First, breath and breath. How do you even say that right? Breadth. I'm going to have to work on that. And depth.
Mm-hmm.
Breadth is how long you take with that emotion, with that
Mm.
wave, with that fear. And I think both of us are really shortening that time.
Yes.
So the party can start, but we're not going to stay for very long before we get the heck out of there.
Right.
Once we recognize that we're in the party, we're like, wait, if because I see what's going on now, I can make a choice to step out of it.
Right.
And the depth is while you're in there, you don't go too deep into it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't let it become an all-consuming, take you over, emotional
Yeah.
meltdown, smolder
Right.
disaster, or at
Yes.
least not for very long.
Yeah, I think that that's actually a really good way of thinking about it. You know who I was the third person who I think is really interesting. Both of you and I interviewed him, and you said you were having tacos once on the beach, and you saw his picture there. What's his name? The guy who speaks to the London Parliament. He does bhakti yoga.
Yeah, and it will come to me momentarily. Um, and
He's
he's
a
actually
short.
from, well, he's not from your neck of the woods, but he's done. I think he may even have a center up in Seattle.
He does?
He
No,
may.
really. Anyways, that guy
And he's in India.
now I
That's
can't
where
remember
his
his name,
main center is.
but he's
Ah,
just a beautiful person. And the thing I don't know what it felt like when you
is
were.
it we'll
It's like
pause for one brief
Swami
second. I want to say Swami. Uh,
Kichanarda or something like Kichanarda. I can't remember his name.
one last try. Radhanath Swami.
Radhanath Swami. Yes, that guy. Radhanath Swami. Um, he was another really interesting person, and I don't know what your experience is with being with him, but when you're with him, when I was with him, he is so present. He That was my experience with someone who's completely present, and he was just so calm and present. And I would say something like, which was serious, like I'm striving, because I'm a striver, to figure out some spiritual concept. And I'm like, well, don't you ever have one of those times, so I'm like that mode, right? And he's like, and so I'd say something like, do you ever wonder like how long it's going to be enlightened? Something stupid like that. And he's just like, he's looking at me, and I just feel like just this utter calm. And he goes,
Always laughs first.
he's laughing. And I'm thinking to myself, that is not a funny question. It's just not funny. But but it was so but now I look back and I realize that he's so present and he sees like the humor, and so if you're really present with what's coming up and you just allow it to be, it's pretty darn funny. But because at first I was like, "Gosh, am I ridiculous?" Because you're laughing at every one of these questions, most of which are serious. But he was laughing. I don't know if it was just like recalling that moment in himself when he was at that moment, and just now listening from a higher state and finding it completely hilarious, just the question itself. But did you have the same experience with him? I don't know how. I
Oh, I
just
absolutely did. Every single question, and it's the Buddha laugh, and it's this place is crazy. It's nutty. It's lunacy, and it's beautiful even in the lunacy.
Yeah.
Um, I had my parents visit yesterday. This kind of goes along the same lines. They
Hmm.
were driving from Boston to Florida, and they were in a hurry or a panic or something to get out of the house. My mom fell on the stairs,
Oh no.
and she's in the car driving to me. She's like, "Yeah, we're okay. I'm fine. Your dad's driving," which is the red flag. That means something's up. She's like, "Yeah, I fell. I hurt my hand. It's a little bit swollen." And
Oh.
by the time they got here, uh, first off, her hand was broken. I knew it,
Oh
and
no.
so we got to get that taken care of. But in my childhood, their lunacy energy would completely spin me out of control.
Hmm.
Now it still has that potential. I mean, you've got your childhood wiring, but it's actually kind of funny. I love them very, very dearly.
It's like seeing a
And
Bugs Bunny cartoon or something.
Yeah, there's a craziness, there's an enjoyment, and I think that's a bit of what Swami sees. Is
Yeah.
this craziness is what it is. It's for whatever reason, somebody up above went and put us into these bodies. And let's see what kind of fun they have with this system.
I think that that must be because I think that if you just are really present and you really tune into what's happening, it's pretty funny. That was another person who I felt like was had moved to a different level where he was so calm. I've never of all the
Pure
guests that I've
divine
had,
love.
yeah, he feels like pure divine love, and for me, it didn't feel as much like love, and I'm not saying that he doesn't have it, but for me, my felt sense about it was just a sense of serenity, peace, and just laughter was just that. So it's I don't know. Those are the people that, from my experience, that I look back and go, wow, that was a really those are three people who, yes, they are on paper and noteworthy, but they're also like when you meet them and you feel the presence in their energy, it is qualitatively different than interacting with other people, I think.
Mhm.
Are there other people for you that you think, looking back, you think, wow, those people they were really, because you've done so many interviews over almost a year and how many, like half now, maybe?
Year and 4 months, we're at show number 470 or so,
Right.
something like that.
So you've
So,
interviewed 470 people. Which ones for you?
well, an interesting thing is this weekend I went to a Paul Selig event
Yes.
in New
Oh
York
my
City.
God, tell me about it.
It's absolutely amazing. There's so much to share on. We'll go for the most. Well, okay, I guess I need to set the stage. So Paul Selig is a Yale educated NYU professor for 27 years, a brilliant, brilliant guy who was an atheist in his early years. He kind of surrendered out of necessity in life, had a crack open experience, and started to realize that he could hear things and read things and hear guides in his head, and went on to write books for these guides. He's now on book number 5, I believe it is. We've had him on the show a couple times. I believe you've had him on probably a couple times. And he's special. He's real deal. He is also completely conflicted on his own path, meaning he's human too. He
Hmm.
gets these transmissions, these words that come through him that are so incredibly beautiful. And it's clearly he's struggling to keep up in his own life with them,
Mm-hmm.
as the majority of us are.
Right.
And so hearing him in person and him, the poor thing, poor Paul, the night before, and I guess this has been going on for a couple months, he's got new tenants living in the apartment beneath him. And so they were up partying or screaming or doing all
Oh
sorts of things
no.
all night the night before, including playing the piano, I think guitar and drums and some other things, straight through the night. He got no sleep. He's here at this event, and he said, one of two things is going to take place because I'm completely exhausted. Either this is going to be an incredibly beautiful transmission because my ego is not going to stand a chance of getting in the way of what the guides need to say, or the guides are going to come down on me for some of the stuff I was saying not so quietly and pretty out loud to not he didn't go out and knock on the door, but about the people living downstairs. And
Yes.
he goes, they're going to get on my case. And the guides did some of both. But as he's there, and what he'll do is he'll speak the words rapid fire quietly that the guides are speaking to him in one voice, and then he repeats it sort of himself in this joyous, strong, powerful, as it was described to him, a person from each of the English Isles. His accent would change from a proper London accent to a Welsh accent to a Scottish, Celtic, all over the Isles, and he was rocking back in his seat, kind of holding on to the seat as he was doing this. It looked like he
Whoa.
might tear the arms off of the seat because he was so exhausted. He's rubbing his eyes. His eyes are closed. They're barely open. And he's just like struggling to hold on as the guides are kind of working him as a marionette.
Oh my God, that's fascinating.
it was an amazing experience. And he did an attunement with us where he used words that the guides have given him that have a frequency. All words have a frequency to it. And we practiced some of those words we've mentioned on the show. And what they're most fond of right now is I know what I am in truth. I know who I am in truth. I know how I serve in truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was doing this attunement, and you could feel the energy come up. You got goosebumps, and it got either chills or warmth. It was really cool. Toward the end, he said, I'm going to do a personal attunement with each one of you, and I'm going to let the guides drive the ship. And he stands up, and all of a sudden, he's got this sweetest smile on his face.
Yes, it looks
And
completely different than I've been to one of his events. His face looks his whole face changes.
soft Santa.
Yeah.
He's a soft Santa, and it was wild. So when you talk about the look that Ratanath Swami or any of these others have, that presence, and particularly Ratanath Swami's laughter,
Yeah.
I think of just this joyous softness about Paul that comes over him, and he's a fairly gruff, cynical New Yorker in many ways.
Oh, if when he's not channeling,
Yeah.
he's like, I don't know, CJ. I don't know myself. It's like that kind of thing. And then now though, when I think of Paul, I think of that face because it so much changes. His eyes change color. Did he tell you that? And he said that, and I couldn't believe it. And then I looked. I'm like, oh my God, his eyes have changed color.
So I'm front row, the seat right in front of him.
Yes.
I just wanted the presence there during this thing. And so I watched him the whole time, and it was a very cool experience. Then he does this attunement, and I saw his beautiful blue eyes, and not only was he attune me, and then I would sit down, but then he'd have more people come up, and then they'd sit down. And so I got to see his face over and over and over and over and over and over as he was attuning everybody in the room.
Interesting.
And so his face is really burned into my palate, burned into my mind.
Yeah.
And then he sat down and he goes, I don't know if it happened today, but did anybody see my eyes change color? And people are like, well, we saw your blue eyes. And he goes, my eyes are hazel. And I'm in the front seat, and I'm like, holy crap.
It's really
different
amazing.
Eyes, different. Because what I remember the most is his blue eyes, and they weren't blue. When did he put the contacts on, CJ?
Oh my God, it hurts so bad. I know. It is, and okay, so his face is normally like long and kind of, he's long, kind of a longish, not long, but it's like long and thin, right? And when he was channeling stuff, his face seemed like it was round, like cherub, soft, like everything is soft. And normally it's like he has like an intensity, like, he's kind of intense guy, right? And his face is kind of more angular and long. And when he was channeling, his face also changed to be like more soft. It was like all of a sudden his cheeks got fuller. I mean, it's just, I don't even know his physiology changed so much when he was channeling. Okay, did you get an individual reading from him? Because he does these individual one-on-one readings that are just unfreaking believable. And when you're there, it shifts with you too, because as he's tuning into their energy, any part, because we are all one, right? And so the person comes up and they talk about something where they're arguing with their family and you're hearing it, but then what it does is, for me, and I think for the audience and its intention, is it triggers up a moment where you actually have an issue with a family member. And all the sayings that he says kind of usually relate to that family member, and you're like, wow, that also relates to me. And so he does these individual readings. Did you get an individual reading too?
Didn't beforehand. We spoke, and he thought maybe I would get one yesterday. He said, I have a feeling, but he was shot exhausted.
Yeah.
And so a few people got really short, like 1 minute readings where he would look at somebody and all of a sudden he'd take on her persona and then just be speaking as if he was her and just nail her spot on and tell her something that she needed to work on. but it was an amazing what we learned, what we got, and I think what we got on a spiritual level was tremendous. And I left, and I was really on cloud nine. I ran back to Penn Station, and I preferred to run instead of take the subway station.
Yes.
And I was like, woohoo! And just flying along, and it was like below freezing out. I'm in my sandals, and I'm like dancing, and I ran past SantaCon. So so there are like
What's
thousands of
SantaCon?
Santas on the street.
Oh my God.
I had no idea there was such a thing.
What's the purpose for SantaCon? So it's for Santas to get together and talk, or
Why
what?
not? Well,
Oh
I mean,
my
and
gosh.
Santas were everybody. There were kids in Santa costumes. There were women in Santa costumes. There
Oh
were,
my gosh.
and I'm sure some of our listeners have been at SantaCon, and I thought it was absolutely hilarious. And I'm running past. They're all in their sandals. I'm running, or they're in their Santa suits. I'm in my sandals. It was just such a beautiful juxtaposition. But I think I was charged from that event with Paul, and it was really, at its essence, the whole game that the guides were trying to say is the gig is up. You're not your small self. You're not your ego. You're not your fear. You're not that judgment, that darkness, that shadow inside of you that's trying to drive the ship. And you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to take action on it. All you need to do is remember who you are.
Hmm.
I know what I am in truth. I know who I am in truth. I know how I serve. And to serve doesn't mean to do work for others or to do this big thing. To serve means to be your true, genuine self.
Hmm.
I know how I serve in truth. And he says, when you do that, he goes, the next part that the guys are saying is it's all about freedom. And when you say this, I know who I am in truth. I know what I am in truth. I know how I serve in truth. I am free. I am free. I am free. And I can feel myself as I am saying that, just wanting to give this woohoo because I feel lighter
Yeah.
from that.
Yeah.
There is a resonant frequency to the words that one says, well, I know
Who
who I
I
am.
am in truth. I know what I am in truth. I know how I serve in truth. I am free. I am free. I am free. And it's funny, even hearing you say it, my energy was lifting. But saying it, there's something else that happens. So I think it's important to say it as well.
I think it's very important. And so I'm repeating it more and more. And I feel like I thought about what Paul is going through. And so I've kind of got this imaginary thing in my head that there's the higher self, Paul's soul,
Right.
spirit, is sitting at a chair. Maybe it's a round table that he's sitting at on the other side of the veil.
Hmm.
Call it heaven, call it someplace.
I
He's
love
probably
a
got
round table sitting on the other side of the
his
veil.
Starbucks latte there with him on the
Exactly.
other side. He's kicked back and he's like, I don't know, he's in a poker game. He's in something. And all of a sudden, one of the guides comes over, and maybe he's even got like next to his ear one of those kind of megaphone things, it's like a tube or something. It expands outward,
Hmm.
and it's by his ear, and the guide whispers something into it. And all of a sudden, Paul on this side says, blah, 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 and then repeats it. Like
Right.
there are different people sitting at the table that come over to him and whisper in his ear, and suddenly the voice comes out here on this side.
Yeah.
So it's kind of humorous when you think about it, because what are these guys? Are they just standing next to him? Oh, wait, my turn. And then and then another, and it was just, it's fascinating. But
It is incredible to witness. It really is incredible to witness. And when people answer what you were saying earlier, is like people would ask a question like, "I'm really worried about my daughter," and then he's like, "So this is you, and he's like, "I'm really no, you can't do it. No, you can't do it," and this is your daughter. I don't care. I don't care. So he's like basically. I don't trust you, like whatever it is. He literally channels those people and their psyche and their personality and their mannerisms and I mean, it's he's really a gifted person because he is able to channel things like in ways that I've never seen before because he's willing to let that energy inhabit his body. Which I think would be really hard from an egoic standpoint to just let go at that level.
it's
Um,
really hard, I think, in particular for him. We're talking NYU tenured professor in screenwriting, I believe it
yeah,
was.
it is.
And so he lived for many years. None of this came into his academic work.
Yeah.
He would be on the sides like every Wednesday evening with a very small group, practicing this stuff, doing readings on the side, and keeping it completely separate lives.
Yes.
Then on one thing, he's an analytical professor and very, very sharp as a tack and linear minded. And on the other hand, he's got voices coming in
I
his
know.
head.
It's just, but don't all of us? It's just that he's now like he's wrestling in a really big way for what all of us actually probably experience if we open ourselves up to it. All right, we
One
got
of
to
the
wrap
cool
up.
things.
We got to wrap up because I just
Okay,
realized.
one last really
Yes,
cool
one last
Paul
thing.
thing.
Yeah.
And yes, I've got another interview to
I
prep for.
know.
You've got to get going. Was that he said he had quote unquote writer's block for 15, 16, 17 years.
Yeah.
And until the guide said, and he was completely exhausted. He'd been fired from a Broadway show or something.
Yeah.
And his guides come to him and he was in bed under the covers and they said, and sorry, Paul, if I'm completely butchering this, but they said, we're going to write a book through you and it's going to take only 30 hours. Are you game? And he's written 5 books now, and he goes, it's really weird. I look at the books, they've got my name on it. I didn't write these things.
Yeah. But that's actually the amazing thing, right? There, he's channeling these books. Well, anyways.
So I think saying those things, and whether it's saying that, whether it's saying I love you, I love myself, I think there are some universal things that if you say can pop you into that higher place, can shift that energy for you. That's what I got out of that. We'll talk another time. Jessica went to Dr. Joe Dispenza this week as well.
Oh, I want to hear that.
Well.
Oh.
So I think there are lots of modalities. We find our own one that fits for us, or throw the kitchen sink at it. That not just when things are going wrong, but that's a great time to practice it. But all the time, if you can, of trying to get that frequency up.
Yep.
Because I think that's our natural state of being. That is who we are. And when we get there, I love to say that's when the magic happens, but I believe that is when the magic happens.
I think you're right.
Everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler and
CJ Liu
saying, be well, have fun, crank your own energy up to the max, and shine bright.
Woohoo!